Hello everyone. I wonder how many of you have had a look at this little book that's in your pack. Yes, we put this and some questions, didn't we, to talk about with your grown-ups, and it's called The First Men on the Moon, because indeed these three men travelled up in Apollo 11, the first spacecraft to take them to the moon. And Neil Armstrong here was the mission commander, so he was in charge of the mission. That was the trip up to the moon, and he was the first man to walk on the moon. And Buzz Aldrin here, he was the second man to walk on the moon. And Michael Collins went up with them, but he didn't get to walk on the moon. He stayed in the special part of the spacecraft called the command module, made sure that everything was still going okay. So if you've had a look through the booklet, it's a little non-fiction booklet, isn't it? A finding out book. You might have found out quite a lot about what happened when they first stepped down on the moon, because they didn't know what the moon's surface was going to be like, did they? Might have found out about the blast off and how they landed back on Earth in the sea. Lots of lovely facts in there, but I've also got a book today, and it looks like a storybook, but actually it's got lovely pictures, lovely illustrations, but it is actually the story of Neil Armstrong, who was the first man to walk on the moon. And when he got on the moon, he said that he took this step down, and he said it's one giant leap for a man, that was for him, one small step, sorry, for him. He just took a small step down from the spacecraft, and one giant leap for mankind, because the people on Earth hadn't explored in space, certainly hadn't been to the moon before. So when they said it was a giant leap, it was like a great thing to happen. We were going to find out a lot more about the moon and other parts of space because of this special mission. So I'm going to read it to you today. It's got quite a lot of words, but have a look at the pictures as well as we go along. Okay. Oh, look. Different phases of the moon. Look, when you can see different parts of the moon in the illustrations there in the pictures. So in 1932, that's a long time ago, nearly 90 years ago, a little boy called Neil Armstrong watched airplanes race. Small, brightly coloured planes flashed over Neil and his father. Here he is, look, on his dad's shoulders. And the planes raced around a triangle-shaped course, and their propellers tearing the sky with a sound that was like a huge thunderclap, so it was noisy and exciting. The spectacle left its mark on young Neil. 4 years later, he leapt at the chance to ride in an aeroplane. So when he was just 6, just a little bit older than some of you, he got the chance to go into an aeroplane. It wasn't a racing plane, but it was a passenger plane with 3 motors that was nicknamed the Tin Goose. The plane offered rides from the town airport and could carry about 12 people. Neil and his father climbed on board and buckled themselves into the seats. The engine sputtered to life with a huge noise. The aeroplane raced down the runway and slowly lifted up into the sky. As the ground dropped farther and farther below them, people, houses, cars, and everything looked smaller. The Tin Goose ploughed through the clouds as the gusts of wind bounced it up and down. It must have been a very bumpy ride. The noisy, bumpy ride. Oh, an ever-tilting view, was worrying Neil's dad, but Neil was fearless. He was delighted. So Neil started to make little aeroplanes, and he started to read flying magazines. He also started having a magical dream. In it, he held his breath and he hovered above the ground. And below him, people, houses, cars, and everything looked smaller. It's like him in his imagination, look, flying above his house and his dog and all the things below. He's got a dream, isn't he, of flying up high. As Neil grew, so did his interest in flying. Hundreds of models, aeroplanes, and stacks of air travel magazines began to appear in his bedroom. He's making lots and lots of planes and reading lots and lots of magazines. He's fascinated, isn't he? That's his favourite thing. He took a job mowing the grass at the local cemetery to help pay for all these things. And when he was about 11, Neil worked for a bakery. Because he was small, he was placed into the dough mixing machines to clear them out. So he had lots of jobs to try and pay for the things that he wanted to buy. He dreamed again and again of hovering above the world below, going high and looking down on the cars, looking down on the cats on the roof below. He got a special dream. When he was 13, his family moved to a large white house on a street in Wapakoneta, Ohio. This is in America. Neil had been born in the living room of his grandparents' farm nearby. He was shy and he made friends carefully, but still his life was busy. There was school and Boy Scouts, and he played on the baritone horn in the school band and in a group called the Mississippi Moonshiners. He liked playing his horn, look. He flew rubber band powered aeroplanes from a grassy hill. And he worked at the market and a hardware store, and he swept up and he stocked shelves on the main streets of his town. Oh, what a busy boy. On clear nights, look here, look, Neil climbed onto the roof of his neighbour's garage. Mr. Zint, who lived next door, had a homemade telescope mounted there, and he always said that visitors could spy on the moon and stars above. Neil looked and looked and looked. That was one of his favourite things to do, to look out into the night sky. A few miles from where Neil lived, there was a little airport, and he went there to watch the planes take off and land. And sometimes people paid him to wash their planes. But watching and washing was not enough. He asked his parents if he could learn to fly. Wow, what an adventure. The lessons cost $9 an hour. That was quite a lot of money. So he'd have to work 25 hours for every hour of flying that he did. But his parents agreed that he could. So soon afterwards, Neil squeezed himself into a tiny champion aeroplane with his teacher, who was called Aubrey. First, he learned to take off and land. He learned to climb and swoop and bank. He learned to follow a figure-of-8 path in the sky. It's like a number 8. And he learned that a pilot and an aeroplane together can be more than the person or the machine alone. They can work together as a great team. Wow. Neil Armstrong earned his student pilot's license on his 16th birthday, so he was flying when he was just 16. He was too young to have a driver's license, but he could fly a plane. So he couldn't drive a car, but he could fly a plane. In time, Neil Armstrong, the pilot, became Neil Armstrong, the Navy fighter pilot. He actually went to war with the Navy and flew planes there. Then he was Neil Armstrong, the test pilot, and he flew rocket-powered aeroplanes. And eventually, after all this flying, he became Neil Armstrong, the astronaut. Had to do lots of training. Now, astronauts are special people, special pilots who fly spacecraft around the Earth. When Neil became an astronaut, there was a plan to land people on the moon and then return them safely to Earth. The moon had gripped people's imagination for thousands of years. There's somebody in the past, look, with an old-fashioned telescope looking at the moon. Everybody had wanted to go there, but they hadn't quite had the technology or been able to do so. But on the 16th of July, 1969, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins sat in a cramped capsule atop of a rocket called the Saturn rocket. The Saturn was as big as an office building and powerful enough to fling these three people more than 200,000 miles away to the moon. There they were, sat in the cockpit together. At just after 9:30 in the morning, the main rocket motors erupted. Flames spewed from Saturn's tail as it lifted from the ground. Soon the first set of engines were exhausted of their fuel and they fell back to Earth. So the first part of the rocket is released and fall back. Smaller engines sprang into life and sent the capsule circling around the Earth. After 2 turns around the Earth, the final rocket engine blasted the capsule at 25,000 miles an hour. Wow! And they hurtled towards the moon. This is what their craft looked like then. Neil, Buzz and Mike sped through the black space for 4 days. The sun's light was broiling hot. Shadows were really cold. To prevent one side of the capsule becoming heated or frozen, it turned very slowly, like a hot dog on a grill. And the astronauts called it the barbecue roll. So when the part of the capsule was facing the sun, it was very, very hot. But when it was facing away towards the moon, it was very cold. So they kept it moving so that it wouldn't get too hot or too cold with those amazing astronauts inside. Whoops, lost my page. Let's see what happens next. Wow, here we go. This is the Lunar Module that lands. Look, when they reached the moon, Neil and Buzz entered a special spacecraft designed to part from the main capsule and land on the moon. Michael remained in the main part of the capsule to pilot as the other 2 astronauts dropped to the moon's surface. Wow. A computer guided Neil and Buzz, but as they neared the landing, Neil saw that there were large boulders in their way. So he took control of the craft and slipped it over the obstacle. While he searched for a safer place to land, the alarm blared, warning and that they were low on fuel. With only a few seconds of fuel remaining, Neil Armstrong lowered the hovering spacecraft to the moon's surface. Down it went. Earthlings Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had finally reached the moon. And I know that they stayed inside the capsule for a few hours before they get out. Well, wearing their spacesuits and helmets, they opened the hatch of the spacecraft. Before them was the moon, magnificent and empty. Neil climbed down a ladder and hopped onto the ground. Special cameras allowed 600 million people on the Earth to watch and listen. That's a small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, Neil said into his microphone. He gathered moon rocks for scientists to study later. As he worked, his boots left marks in the dust. Can you see them? Look, his trail there. Neil's footprints may remain there for 1,000,000 years. There's no wind, no rain and no snow on the moon to disturb them. So nothing to blow them away, no wind to blow them away. Buzz climbed down the ladder and stepped onto the moon's surface. Earth hung above them. Can you see the Earth in the distance? Look. There they were on the moon, and there's the Earth, the planet Earth, where we all live, far, far, far away. The sky seemed perfectly black. They could see North Africa behind some swirling white clouds. Neil shuffled over the powdery surface towards Buzz. The sun shone with a bright white light. They were walking on the moon. Neil stood next to Buzz, and their helmets almost touched. Buzz grinned broadly, and Neil clasped his hand on his partner's shoulder. "Isn't it fun?" Neil said. How amazing. I bet it is. So, on July the 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped onto that moon and became a hero to millions of people. But inside him was the memory of an ordinary boy from Ohio, a boy who loved books and music, a boy who was shy and who made friends very carefully, a boy who dreamed of hanging in the air, suspended only by a trapped breath. So, just an ordinary boy. But what did he get to do in the end? Because he was determined. Yes, he got to be an astronaut, didn't he, and go into space. And I know that already a couple of children who are here in school with me at the moment are saying, I want to do that. I want to be an astronaut that goes into space. It's great to have a passion, isn't it? Something that you really want to do. I think is amazing. And I know today we put the moon landing, and we put children's version of the moon landing into YouTube, and we watched some of the video, because there is video that shows it down on the Earth, all the people who are in the control center, and it also shows pictures of the rocket blasting off, and pictures and videos from the moon. It's very hazy because it's obviously over 50 years ago, but it's amazing to see. Wow, what an adventure. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the book today. It wasn't a story because it was true. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.